Hello and welcome to the Grove Church Podcast. I'm Charlie Lofton, the lead pastor there, and we are so glad that you're joining us. Whether you are a member and you're just catching up on a sermon that you missed, or you're someone who's brand new, we are really glad that you are joining us. And if you are new in some way, and I know that a lot of people will do that, will listen to sermons first before they visit, I want you to know that we would love to meet you at any point. You can join us live in our services on Sunday, 9 and 10:30, or our streaming service at 10:30. Either way, we would love to be able to get to know you. And regardless of why you are here listening to this sermon today, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, good morning. Hey, if you are new, I'm Charlie, the lead pastor here, and really glad that you are worshiping with us today. Really glad all of you are here, online or in person. Really glad everybody's here worshiping with us. And as Lauren mentioned, we are finishing up a series in the 10 Commandments this week. We'll finish up the last two here this week, and next week we'll start a series. We're just going to spend some time over the next 3 weeks kind of talking about who we are as a church. What is it that God's called us to? Just kind of a good time of renewal and commitment to what this incredible mission that God has called us to here at the Grove Church. So look forward to that. Hopefully you can join us over the next few weeks. A lot of you know this, but some of you will not. That really I would say my number one hobby, number one passion outside of my faith, my family, work, those kinds of things. My number one passion / hobby is Razorback basketball. All right, I just love it. I have loved it since I was 7. I am fully aware that I live in a football state, in a football region, in a football world, but I've always been a basketball guy. Loved it since I was 7, played it as long as I could, and have been following the Razorbacks very closely my whole life. And I love being here in Fayetteville where the games are, the culture is here. I've had season tickets probably for the last 8 or 9 years. And over the course of those 8 or 9 years, I've had a lot of incredible experiences. Seen some last minute wins, stormed the court, watched our former rival coach, now our current head coach, get kicked out. Loudest that arena has ever been in all the years that I have been there. I have been able to be on the court for like a presentation to all of the season ticket holders who had perfect attendance the season before. I've been able to do that a couple of times. I've had the opportunity. Some friends had some seats like right behind the bench. I got to sit there one time. I've gotten to be in a box with some people before. They used to have, during a couple of seasons, they had a trivia contest you could do on your phone during halftime, like the whole arena. I won that not once, but twice. Where your name pops up, they give you a little gift bag, they say your name, been on the screen. I have been on that, the little cam, little timeout cam, little fan cam on the big screen more times than I care to recount. I have a little shtick that I do. I enjoy it. Anyways, I have had just about every experience one can have at Bud Walton Arena, save one. There's a group of seats that are right there on the court. Used to be 1 row, then they decided they could make 2 rows out of it. Some people call it Gucci row. It is right there on the court. They have these little badges. Apparently, I wouldn't know. Apparently, there's a place where you go where there's free snacks and all these sorts of things, and they get to go back there. And I've never gotten to sit there. And sometimes I'll watch them. Sometimes they're not watching the game. Sometimes they just stand the whole time back there with the snacks. Sometimes the people who have these seats, they don't even show up. Sometimes you bring your 2-year-old. Your 2-year-old is there for the popcorn. Put them anywhere in the arena. They do not understand or appreciate how great that seat is. And I sit here in my upper deck seats looking at them, wondering, why not me? Why not me? And so there have been times where I'm doing the thing that I love so much with a family member, with one of my really good friends, doing something I love, and my heart and mind are distracted by something I don't have, by something that I've never got, something that someone else has that I don't. And rather than fully being present in the moment of what I love, I'm distracted by what I don't have. Now, I am mostly kidding. I don't want to say that I am completely kidding because I have never sat there. I really want to sit there, and sometimes I do judge them. But it's insignificant. It's not really that deep. It's not that really that personal to me. But it does reflect an attitude that I have sometimes at the game, and tragically, many of us have in life. You're doing what you love. You are with people that you love, experiencing life at a really high level, and your heart and your mind can't help but notice something someone else has that you don't. And rather being able to be present in the moment or being able to fully enjoy and experience and appreciate the life that you have, you get lost in the gap or a perceived gap between where you are and who you are and what you wish were true. Now, in Exodus chapter 20, we've got this list of 10 commandments. We've been kind of going through them over the last couple of months. And to remind ourselves, we got this group, they're coming out of Egypt. They've been enslaved for 400 years and now are being led to the promised land. And God is going to establish them as his people. And he's got to undo all the things that of this culture that they had in Egypt and undo this kind of slave mentality and protect them kind of from the dangers of the cultures around them that would be bad influences on them, and really just trying to build them up into who it was that God has called them to be. And over the course of the last couple of months, we've seen a lot of different commands that really kind of have a lot of different motivations. And I think these really stick at just kind of this core. If you are going to live long-term as my people, peaceful, content in the place where I have put you, you need to understand these couple of things. And they're in Exodus 20, verses 15 and 17. And obviously, you'll see how they go together. The first one, simple one, you shall not steal. If it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to someone else. You don't take it. It's not yours. If it's not yours, don't take it. It doesn't belong to you. Do not take what doesn't belong to you. And verse 17 really kind of gets a lot to the heart of that. Verse 17, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Now, covet, I feel like, is almost exclusively a Bible word. We don't really typically use it in other contexts. We're more likely to use envy, jealous, crave, lust, desire. Covet feels like it belongs here. I think we do know what it means. It's what it means to jealously desire something that does not belong to you. And so God is saying, not only should you not take something that does not belong to you, but you need to watch your heart and your mind what happens when you see someone has something that you don't have, that you wish that you had, that is better than what you have. And so he kind of, to make sure he's very clear of what he means by this, more than he did in a lot of the other ones, he goes into really explicit detail. You may look at your neighbor's house. That's nicer than my house. You may look at your neighbor's spouse and it's like, I don't even have one. Or you look at them and say, they're prettier, nicer, more hardworking, kinder, a better parent. They're just a better spouse. They have a better spouse than what I have. Their servants, their land, their job, their productivity, what they have is more or better than what I have. Their ox, their donkey, all the luxuries that they need, all the things that they need to thrive and survive, they have more than I do. They have better than I do. He's like, whatever you do, do not allow your heart to linger on that, where it turns into, again, the word coveting, this jealous desire for something. And we fast forward to 1 Timothy chapter 6, and Paul kind of goes into this, I feel like, in a little more detail of kind of what happens, what happens to someone who allows their heart to linger in this kind of craving, selfish kind of jealous desire. And he encourages Timothy to do something different. And so in context, 1 Timothy chapter 6, Paul is talking to Timothy, a young pastor, kind of inexperienced, and helping him just kind of grow and understand what the job is and helping him navigate some issues. And in particular, in this chapter, the issue is there are some people, some teachers, some false teachers teaching false things, trying to distract Timothy, pulling people away from Timothy's church. And he says that they are using their platform as a teacher, as someone who's starting this other church. They're using this platform for their own personal gain. They're using it, they believe it is a means, an opportunity to gain power and wealth. And so they aren't motivated by helping people. They aren't motivated by telling people about Jesus. They are motivated by their own personal power and financial gain. That is so culturally irrelevant. None of us have ever experienced anything like that here. So we will just pass that over because that certainly is not something worldwide, all over, everywhere, all the time. But that is, so he basically says, listen, there are people who are like that are viewing their godliness as a means of gain. And then he says this, 1 Timothy 6, starting verse 6, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So you got these people, and they're trying to use godliness and a platform to become financially wealthy. He says, but in fact, being a godly person and being content with what you have, that is in fact great gain. You didn't have anything when you were born, and you're not going to have anything when you die. Don't worry about that, because if you have what you need to survive, you've got a food and a place to live, just be content with that. Because there are people out there striving for more. And because of that, they have all these schemes. And they're ruining themselves on the inside and the outside. And then he says this phrase, very popular. It is very popular to not only misinterpret, but just to misquote entirely. Some people will say the money is the root of all evil. It's not what it says. It says the love of money. And it doesn't say all, it just says all kinds. The love of money can lead to all kinds of problems, which is in fact overwhelmingly true. When you have this unhealthy striving, and then he says this, because some people, because of this unhealthy desire, they have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So we'll sum this up this way, that coveting brings grief, but contentment brings gain. So someone has this coveting, this jealous desire, this craving for more, and they think that if I desire and I pursue and I get, and I can get more, then I'll gain something. I get something, I gain something. That makes sense. And Paul's saying you need to think about it very differently, because this striving for more causes more problems than it solves. But in fact, if you want to gain, you want to have more, be at peace with what you have. It's an interesting play on words, because he's obviously not talking about acquiring more money, he's acquiring more stuff, but the things that matter, in the areas of life that really matter, in the thing that is going on internally inside you, in your heart and in your mind. You want to gain. You will gain by being peaceful, by being content. And while you may acquire more stuff through this greedy desire, you will in fact find yourself pierced with all sorts of things, pierced with many griefs. It plunges people into ruin and destruction. Even if you gain all of the stuff, this greedy desire, it is corrosive, and it takes more than you gain. And so Paul is giving Timothy and his church, he's giving them and ultimately all of us this opportunity to kind of contrast this idea. Will I choose to be content with what I have and thus have gain? Or will I covet and strive for more than what I have and pierce myself with many griefs? And honestly, I think that there are two different sorts of coveting that I think that people struggle with. And it is interesting that I believe that these two sorts of coveting are really kind of encapsulating the worst parts of the two parts of our political system. We've got two cultural voices out there, and I think they both in their own way represent two different sides of the same coin of this unhealthy desire we have and we get when we see someone who has more than what I have. You have more than what I have. You have better than what I have. When I see that, how do I respond? And there's a movement in our culture that if you see it, you go for it. You just get it. You can satisfy that. You can have more. If you work hard, if you do more, you can have it all. And life is found in the acquisition of more. And once you have yours, you need to protect it and make sure that it stays yours. And so I selfishly go after it. I selfishly protect it because the acquisition of more is where life is found. So people always have their eyes not on where they are, but what could be next. But then there's a different side too. You look and you see someone that has more than what you have, that has different than what you have. And for good reasons or not, you recognize, hey, I'll never be able to have that. No matter how hard I work, no matter what I do, I will never be able to get from here to where they are. And so a different sort of coveting takes in. It is not right that they have it. And we need some systems to take away from them. And if they will take away, I'll be happier if they have less. Because they need to have less. We need to take it away. We need to level the playing field because it is not right for someone or a group of people to have more than what I have. Two sides of the same coin, both reflecting an unhealthy desire to not live where I am, to not be content with where I am, to not be at peace where I am, but to constantly be mindful of what I don't have and should have and could have, or be mindful of what you have and shouldn't have. I was a year into my tenure as a night manager at Chick-fil-A in the summer of 2001. And it had been a rough year. We'd had some really big financial problems. I was driving this beat-up Honda that had stranded me multiple times all over the Denver area. We were literally living paycheck to paycheck. I'm a full-time student. I've got a 3-year-old. I've got a 1-year-old, and we are just barely making it. But it's for a good reason. We're here at seminary. I'm going to graduate, and then we're going to work as a pastor in churches, and this is a mission that God has called us to. But it was a difficult time. It was very difficult. And the owner-operator at Chick-fil-A comes to me and says, "You're actually really good at this. I know you've got this plan for ministry, but really what I do is ministry too. If you look at it from a certain way, and I've seen the way that you interact with your staff, and obviously I can tell that you're making a real impact. And I think you could do a really good job at this, and you should consider becoming an operator of a Chick-fil-A. It would cost this amount of money up front. I'll just give you that. I'll front it to you. Here's how the profit sharing works, and I'll send you a rec letter. And with my rec letter, because of the influence I have at corporate, you'll 100% do it. You'll get accepted, no problem. You should consider it." Hey, caught me at a really interesting time in my journey when he asked me this. So the end of the month was coming up, and I had to print out all these reports at the end of the month. And I'm like, I'll print out these reports. I might as well look at these numbers. Based on the system that he just told me, what's this brother pulling down every month? And what he made that month is what I had made at most in any 1 year of my life. So he's making 10 to 12 times as much money that I had ever seen. 23 years later, it is 2 to 3 times more than I still have ever made. It was a lot of money. I thought about running the inflation numbers on that. Like, okay, what are $2,001? What would that be today? And I decided my heart probably couldn't take it. But he caught me at a real interesting time. Because here is the life that I knew. I was never uncertain. Not at that time. I was never uncertain. This is what God has called me to do. This is a perfectly legitimate thing. Lots of awesome people do this all the time. And he's offering this. It would have been an off-ramp for me. Not for him, not for a lot of people, but an off-ramp for me. And he puts this out here. And I thought about it very, very, like a long time. And there's a couple of really unhealthy ways that I could have responded to that. One could have been to just abandon what it is God had called me to do, because what I need, what I want is more money, more stuff. And in an unhealthy way, chosen not what God had called me to, but something that in my brain would have been gain. Or the other thing that I could have done would be to have gotten to think, it's just not right. I'm doing all these things for God and doing exactly what he's called me to do. And this is what I have. I'm eating beans 5, 6, 7 times a week. And this guy's got this. I could have gone either of these directions. But I knew what God had called me to. What do you call me to? And so I do not respond with a jealous craving. Do not respond with an envy that feels that somehow what he's doing is not right, because what he did was incredible. He paid me very generously, was very flexible and kind with me with hours and time off. He considered it a ministry to partner with the seminary to give people like me a job. He was a great man doing a great thing, but it wasn't what I was supposed to do. I could have chosen someone else's life rather than the one God had called me to, or I could have chosen to be resentful. But we choose contentment. This is who God has called all of us to be. Because with contentment comes great gain. So I'll just give you a couple of pieces of advice. If this is what we're going to be, if we're going to be people who are not pierced with griefs, who are not set to ruin and destruction with schemes because of an unhealthy coveting and craving and desire, what are some things that we can do? And the first one that I want to say is this, is that we need to discipline. You need to discipline your heart and your eyes. Because there's times, let's just be honest, and sometimes I think Christian culture can be in such a way where we give each other or give people a hard time for noticing things or people that are attractive. That if you see something and you think, ooh, that's nice, that immediately you think that you should feel guilty about it. That's not what this is. That's not what coveting is. But there's a discipline that needs to happen with your eyes and with your heart. So again, just imagine, because again, I think there are 2 primary categories. God addresses them, and I think there are 2 primary categories for us. When we think about kind of an unhealthy craving, desire, lust, jealousy, it is either over stuff or it is around people and sex. So I'm going to kind of describe this to you, and I'm going to start with the safer one first, right? So you're driving by, and you see a house, and the house is really, really nice, and you think, that is a nice house. This has happened a lot over the 30 or so years that Heidi and I have been married. She loves a house with a view. And if we drive past a house with a for sale sign in the yard that has a great view, especially now in the era of smartphones, before we get home, we will know exactly how long that house has been on the market, what it costs, and we'll know all these things. But she loves that. That's what she wants. I like a house like that. So you drive past a house, and because of its size, because of its location, because of its view, because of its amenities, and you think, that is a nice house. Or maybe in addition, it has a nice car. It's a nice house. It's a nice car. You're sitting at a stoplight. That's a nice car. Okay. Your heart saw something good and thought, that's good. You saw something desirable and said, that is desirable. That's nothing. That is just welcome to being a person. Well, but then you drive by the house again. You're like, man, that really is a nice house. You drive past it a third time, just a little bit slower. Cause a little traffic jam behind you. That is a really nice house. And then suddenly, you are going out of your way to drive past it. Your heart, your mind have gotten to the point to where I think about this a lot. I'm thinking a lot about what I don't have, and it is filling up more of my heart and my mind than what it should. And this goes with our sex and sexuality as well. You may be walking around and you see a person, and you think, that person is attractive to me. That is the sort of person that I would like to marry and or have sexual activity with. That is an attractive person. That is someone who is my type, and you see it, and you think, and you feel something. Now that's just, again, welcome to being a human. This is just what happens. God has designed us to be in relationships. He has designed us to love, to be attracted to people, and so you see, right? But you think, wait, I already have a spouse, and so I'm not going to think about it anymore. I already have a house. I already have a car. Or maybe I don't have those things yet, and I wish that I did. But especially when we're talking about another person, when you start thinking about this is what I want, it becomes a what and not a who. It becomes an it, not a he, not a she. And it becomes a very unhealthy striving. And I begin to spend too much of my time going out of my ways to see this person, to drive past this house, to get on the internet, to look at this type of car, something that I know is not for me, and something that I know that is not going to be for me. But I can't seem to stop thinking about it. There comes a point, and I think we know it, that an initial attraction to someone or to something, there's nothing unhealthy about that. But there comes a line where we cross where I have to discipline myself and say, I'm not going to think about that anymore. I'm going to drive past that house and go to the house that I have and say, I have a house. I have a house. And I think the way that we do this, the way that we can discipline our heart and our eyes, if we want to get the gain that comes from contentment, is we have to learn how to practice gratitude. We practice gratitude. I drive past the house, and I come to the house that I have. I have a house, and this is a good house. I have a car. This is a good car. I drive a 2013 Honda Civic. It's a complete nondescript car. Car's not my thing. I have a car. I have a car. I drive, oh, that's a nice car. What do you think about your car? 100% of the time, I've wanted to be here, and then I needed to go here. It's got me there. It's a car. It's a car. It's a car. But I know that some people I want more. I wish I had this. I wish I had this. I want this. I want this. I want this. I want this car. I'm thankful I have one. I wish I had that house. I wish I had this house. But I don't own a house. I rent. I'm in an apartment. You've got some place to live. Be content with that. Well, I don't have a car. Well, you've got money to take the bus. I wish I could eat out more. At least I'm eating. Whatever it is you have, be happy and content there. I'm going to be thankful for what I do have, because thankfulness does a healing thing in your heart. Gratitude, contentment, it heals your heart. It drains poison out. And we've got two choices: contentment with gain in my heart to give me life, to give me peace, or to constantly be striving and thinking about things I don't have, about someone who has something better than what I do. We have raised two daughters. They are 26 and 23. We have a third daughter on the way. She's 12. She's going to be 13. And either I can say that to some of you, and I say she's 12 and she's about to be 13. And some of you are like, oof. And some of you are like, eh? And I'm like, no, oof. It's a difficult season. It is a difficult season in their heart because they start to notice a lot more. They start to notice a lot more things. And they start to notice more about what other people have. And we've had this conversation many times, she and I've had. And I had the exact same conversation with her sisters many, many years ago. You don't have this thing, and they have it. And you think, she has it, I should also have it. It's like, you're just focusing on one thing. That thing is part of the whole package of her life. There are lots of things in her life you would not trade for. You're just focusing on one thing. She has this, I don't have this. But think about all the things that you do have that she doesn't have. And you need to focus on that. The best advice that I can give to my preteen and ultimately my teenage daughters is the same advice for all of us. When we focus on one thing that is an inequity between us and someone else, or two things or three things, and we don't think about the totality, I'm not thinking about the things in my life that I'm genuinely thankful for. If I had all of that, my life would be way more complicated and way more busy and way more than what I want. It would prevent me from being able to do all sorts of other things. The totality of that I don't want. I want the things that I love and have plus that, but it doesn't work that way. You have what you have. And I'm going to practice being grateful. When I see someone that I find attractive, when I see something that I find attractive, like that is attractive, but what I have is great. I love that. I'm content and at peace with that. And with the contentment comes great gain. There have been a lot of times over the last 23 years that I have wondered if I made the right decision in the summer of 2001. Because things have been difficult. There have been times that have been really, really challenging. There's been times when finances were, without a doubt, our overwhelming concern. And I imagine that a life would have been simpler and easier had we chosen the other path. But the way that this works is they choose where you live. So it would have been easier if instead of moving from Denver to St. Louis to Cabot to here, if we'd gone to some suburb of Charlotte, that they were opening a new store, or to somewhere in Atlanta to take over a store where the operator was resigning or it would have been a much easier, simpler life then. It's been a handful of times. The last 23 years is like, maybe. A handful of times over the last 23 years, I thought, it's not too late. I could still do that. His first name was Chris. What was his last name? Times over the last 23 years, I looked it up on the internet to see if he was still there. Gotten pretty far down the road various times, wondering, thinking, was this the right thing to do? Did I make the wrong decision? Is there a better life out there I could have chosen? Not great times. I'm never doing that when I'm in a great mood, right? And then all that changed for me in the fall of 2011 when we met a baby girl named Layla, 4 days old, brought her home, 11 months later got to adopt her. In any other timeline, in any other series of decisions, we would have never met her. She would never been a part of our family. And there is not one amount of money. There is not any amount of gain, stuff. There's not anything that I would trade to not have her in my life. So I stay on the path that God has called me to. And in my heart and in my mind, there is great gain. And then the blessings and the gain that He had out there for us as a family was far greater than any amount of money could ever have been. So greed and coveting, this selfish desire, it brings grief. It is a corrosive agent on our heart and on our mind. But when we choose contentment, God brings peace and hope and life, and there is great gain. Let me pray. God, easier said than done. We live in a world where at our fingertips all the time is all the things that everyone everywhere has. Pictures, videos of trips we're not going on, and houses we don't live in, and cars we'll never have. And it is so easy to be dissatisfied. But God, I pray that we would practice gratitude. We would discipline our heart, our eyes, our mind. That we would appreciate, God, what you have done for us. Through your Son, Jesus Christ, the life that we have with him and the provision that we have, the friends that we have, the family that we have. That, God, we'd be thankful and grateful for what you've given us. And that, God, that we would believe that the gain in life comes with contentment. And it is in your Son's name that we pray. Amen.
Thanks again for joining us on our sermon podcast, and you can learn more about us at thegrovechurch.org. And if you go to thegrovechurch.org/connect, there's a form you could fill out. Just let us know that you've been listening. And if you want to dig deeper on some of these topics that we cover in our sermon podcast, or just in other issues of dealing with culture or theology, those kinds of things, you can check out our Cultivate podcast, which is on the same feed, however you found this particular podcast. So again, this is Charlie, the lead pastor at The Grove, and thank you so much for joining us.